So UFC 302 is going to be taking place this weekend, headlined by Islam Makhachev defending the UFC lightweight title against Dustin Poirier in what should be a very, very fun fight, and potentially could be, if the rumors are true or if that article that did come out is true, Dustin Poirier's final fight. There is a rumor that win or lose, Poirier might retire. I mean, he has had nearly 40 professional fights now. There's a lot of fights in there. And then the co-main event, Strickland, the former champion of middleweight, is taking on Paulo Costa. Two fan favorites for pretty different reasons, I'd say, but also kind of the same at the same time. Going to be taking place in the co-main event. That's going to be fun, and it's a 5-round co-main event as well. Definitely something to keep your eye on, of course. Now, I did make a video for this card predicting the fights last week, and I just decided to do another updated video because a lot of those fights on that card I wasn't that confident in, and as time has gone on, time has increased my confidence in some fights and decreased my confidence in others, but I will talk about that when we do get through the prediction video. I did also want to mention as well the We Want Picks premium membership service, which is $10 per month. You get access to Angelo's bets, Jacob's bets, a lot of tools to help you make your own bets, the articles that I write every single week, but you can get a 3-day free trial by signing up using my code ARTEM, and if you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you do support my channel as well. So if you wanted to support my channel in any way, that is the best way to do it. And now's a good time to do it as well, because most of the bets for UFC 302 by Jacob and Angelo are already up there on the website since they did have the week off. And another thing as well is that that website is going to be having a massive overhaul soon. I believe they're in the middle of it right now. And yeah, there's just going to be a much more easy to use website. So if you already are subscribed, definitely keep your eye out for that as well. Now, let's get into the predictions. Starting off with what Tapology has as the first fight of the night. I'm pretty confident this is the official order right now. Andre Lima taking on Mitch Raposo. Of course, the original fight was Andre Lima versus Gall Timindembarel. But before that, I think Andre Lima had a different fight as well. He's had multiple different fights fall out. Hyun-Sung Park was the original one. Then Gall Timindembarel was the next fight. And now taking him on is Mitch Raposo on pretty short notice. This fight was announced, I believe, only a few days ago, maybe 3 or 4 days ago. So Mitch Raposo has only really had about a week and a half to prepare for this fight. But he was actually scheduled to be on the Contender Series in a couple of months in August against an opponent, Jack Duffy. Now, that opponent, Jack Duffy, is a grappler, and Andre Lima is a striker. And then as for the case of Andre Lima, he was preparing to take on Hyun-Sung Park, which I would almost describe Hyun-Sung Park as more of a striker than anything, even though he is a very talented wrestler as well. And then he was going to take on Gall Timindembarel, who does have a lot of submissions in his career, but he was probably also more of a striker as well, if that makes any sense. Mitch Raposo is a wrestler. Now, his striking has gotten significantly better since he was on the Contender Series in 2021, and before that was on the Ultimate Fighter. I believe the Ortega versus Volkanovski season 29. He did lose in the first round of that and then lost on the Contender Series, but since then, time has gone by. He's gotten much more experience and over some pretty decent opponents on the regional scene, especially compared to the guys that he was fighting before being on the Ultimate Fighter show. He's a very good wrestler. That striking is improving, but to beat Andre Lima, I think he's going to have to take down Andre Lima at least 3 times, at least once per round. And if he's only going to take down Lima once per round, I think he's going to need to get that control time, because Andre Lima is a very, very good striker in my opinion. He hasn't really been able to showcase it fully in the UFC. Now, he has only had one UFC fight, and that ended with the disqualification via biting, and then he also looked really, really good on the Contender Series. But I do want to say, those 2 fights were in the smaller octagon. I'm pretty confident the Contender Series fights are in the smaller octagon. This is going to be in the bigger octagon, so it's going to give Andre Lima, the striker, much, much more space to move, because he does have very, very solid movement on the feet, so that might make it difficult for Mitch Raposo to track him down and then take him down. I also like Andre Lima's takedown and grappling defense. That is one thing that I was incredibly impressed with before he was on the Contender Series. Now, Severino did have some success in the clinch and also in some sort of wrestling moments there, but I do think that we are going to see Andre Lima be able to beat Mitch Raposo in this matchup here, just because it is very much a short notice fight for Raposo. if it was a full camp, maybe I could genuinely go to the Mitch Raposo side, because I do think stylistically it is a pretty good matchup for him, being a wrestler, being a guy that is going to be willing to shoot takedowns over and over and over again. But I do think on the feet, although Raposo's striking has improved a lot, I think he is still the much better striker. He's going to have a lot of movement. He's very, very fast. He's very, very good at the side-to-side movement as well, which we do know can make it hard for him to be pressured down, stalked down, and taken down. I like Lima in this one here. I'm not super confident in him though, but I do think he's going to get it done by decision. I think if Raposo finds success, it's going to have to be in that wrestling, and that definitely could happen, but I'm just going to go with Lima here on the full camp. Joselyne Edwards will be fighting Ailin Perez. Once again, kind of what I did say in my original video is that Joselyne Edwards isn't a bad underdog to pick at all. In fact, I'm surprised that not many more people are going for her, because I was considering picking her to win, but then I kind of realized that stylistically it's just a nightmare for her. Joselyne Edwards is a striker, and the whole time throughout her UFC career, the number one thing that she has struggled with is her takedown defense. And Ailin Perez is a girl that's going to want to be shooting for takedowns over and over and over and over again. In her last couple of fights, she has absolutely dominated with her offensive wrestling. I think that's why the line is so wide, even though I wouldn't play Ailin Perez at minus 265. I do think that she should be able to beat Edwards though. I feel like for Edwards to win this fight, I honestly think that she's going to have to defend almost every takedown or get a knockout on the feet. Now, Edwards is very big for the weight classes, and she's quite tall. She's 5'8", pretty long as well. She does throw a lot of strikes down the middle. She does throw a lot of kicks down the middle as well to try and keep that distance. But Ailin Perez is just going to constantly be crashing forward and trying to get those takedowns. And Joselyne Edwards' takedown defense, although it has improved, I will admit that, still is definitely a weak point in her game. And I do think Perez is going to be able to go out there and get the takedowns and potentially find a submission, but I do think a decision is much more likely. So give me Ailin Perez to win this matchup here as well. The next fight is probably one of the more interesting fights of the night. Gall taking on Bassil Hafez. And the reason why it's interesting is for many reasons on both sides. Gall hasn't fought for 2 years. And then Bassil Hafez has only fought once in the UFC, but he gave Jack Della Maddalena one of the toughest fights in his career, and one judge actually even scored the fight for him. Now, in that matchup, I do think that we kind of saw everything that Bassil Hafez does offer, because he is a very big guy for the weight class. He's incredibly powerful on the feet, but he isn't really the best striker in the world. Where he gets it all done is in the takedowns and the grappling. He's very much a powerful guy, lots and lots of power on the feet that we have seen before, but mostly I would consider him to be a guy that is going to be constantly moving forward to shoot for takedowns and then try and work his grappling, because I do believe he's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Another thing that Bassil Hafez does do is slow down quite a bit, which is maybe where Gall could have an opportunity to win, because if you do watch Bassil Hafez, he had that close fight against, sorry, not a close fight against Evan Cuts, he slept him in the 3rd round, but he had a close fight against Anthony Ivy where he did slow down a lot. I felt like he gassed out quite a bit against JDM, but you definitely could put that down to just being a short notice fight, having to cut the weight, and him just being a very big welterweight in general, so it would have probably been a lot of weights to cut on short notice. But he does slow down, and I think it probably is just because he's a massive welterweight and because of his style. He does throw massive power into his strikes, big time, really only throws hooks, does shoot for the takedowns, got a lot of them against JDM. And then Gall, he's kind of interesting because we've seen Gall fight in the UFC for his entire career. I want to say he made his debut, yeah he did, he made his debut on this event here, and on that card, Dana White was on a looking for a fight episode, and then they just signed him to fight against Mike Jackson and then CM Punk. Like, I think that this was actually an eliminator fight, actually 2 fights CM Punk, and he won it. So he was in the UFC after only 1 professional fight, which is actually crazy, but he had a massive run because he took on and beat Sage Northcutt, who was a big time prospect at the time. Kind of still is, took a lot of time off and then made a big comeback at 1 championship, but recently, I feel like he's kind of fallen in love with his hands a little bit. He has been striking a lot more. He's been boxing a lot more. And I feel like it probably has been not for his best. I guess to his detriment would be the wording for that one there. Mickey Gall, I think on the ground, which is where this fight is most likely going to take place, could be interesting, because if he is still a very dynamic grappler like he once was, maybe he could be able to get Bassil Hafez in a submission, and especially later on in the fight, if he's able to survive the onslaught that is going to be Bassil Hafez in round number 1 and probably most of round number 2, he is going to have most likely a very gassed out, very slowed down Bassil in round number 3. Maybe he could try and make something happen there, but for the most part, coming off of 2 years, I think I don't actually know the exact reason, but I did read somewhere that it was a back injury. We just saw Ramiz Brahimaj come back from one of those, and it didn't look that good against Dembo Garembo. I'm going to go with Hafez here. I'm going to go with Hafez by submission. I don't actually think Mickey Gall's ever been submitted in his career, but he's coming back from 2 years. But Hafez is a grappler, even though he does have a big-time KO. He is very powerful on the feet, and Gall has been KO'd a couple times. But I do like Hafez here. I think he is going to get the takedowns. I wouldn't feel super confident in him if he was taking on somebody else, just because it is kind of hard to tell how good someone really is based off one performance on short notice. But what we did see out of Jack Della Maddalena was incredibly impressive. And now we have Niko Price versus Alex Morono. Alex Morono minus 260 is interesting, but I can kind of understand why. I mean, I said it before last week actually, and I'll say it again. Alex Morono kind of is a little bit of like a weird type of fighter for me. I know a lot of people absolutely love it when I say weird. I think it's my accent, the way that I roll my R's, just from where I'm from in New Zealand, I guess. But yeah, Alex Morono, he's very interesting to me because I feel like he has kind of resorted to, at this point of his career, to just be that guy to take on fights on short notice. I feel like every single big fight that Alex Morono has been a part of, he accepted on short notice. I know he definitely accepted the Donald Cerrone fight on very short notice in that one there, and then he definitely accepted the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight on short notice, and I'm pretty confident these 2 fights were short notice as well from Alex Morono, but I could be wrong about those. Morono is the guy the UFC calls when they need a late replacement, and he says yes every single time. But when it comes down to the full camp fights, we don't really see too many of them. Alex Morono's weird. Man, I keep saying it, huh? Alex Morono is interesting to me, though, because he is a very talented grappler, but he doesn't grapple. And it doesn't make that much sense to me. I feel like maybe when he beat Donald Cerrone, that was when he realized that he gave himself the green light to just become a striker. But if I knew that Alex Morono was going to go out there and grapple Niko Price, I would say the minus 260 is justified, because he is a very talented grappler. Niko Price, though, he's a wild man. We all kind of know how Niko Price fights at this point. Definitely probably wants to keep the fight on the feet against Morono just because of how dangerous he is as a grappler. But Morono we have seen have very good striking fights before. You know, he was beating Santiago Ponzinibbio, and I believe he knocked him down in round 1 and 2 in that fight there, but then Ponzinibbio ended up knocking him out in the 3rd round, and what was actually a pretty crazy KO, because like Morono's jaw went limp in that one. It was actually kind of nuts. But Niko Price, we know what he wants to do. He wants to make it a brawl. He wants to make it scrappy. He wants to make it awkward. But I feel like Morono obviously is another veteran of the game. I don't think he's going to allow him to do that. And if Morono grapples, he should win. If he strikes, I think he should win as well again. But it's just harder to kind of be that confident in him, just because for a guy that's a really good coach, his fight IQ's not that good. It's actually kind of crazy to me. I will just go and put that up there, but I do think Morono wins. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I mean, Niko Price is never in boring fights. Unfortunately for Price, he's probably fighting for his job right now in the UFC. It'll be interesting to see kind of how this one goes. Now we can move on to another welterweight fight. This whole card seems to be a bit of a welterweight showcase, or at least the prelims are. 3 in a row. Phil Rowe taking on Jake Matthews. And I'm going to be going with Phil Rowe as the underdog in this one here. I don't feel very confident in this one at all. I feel like this is actually a fight which I think it's very difficult to be confident in either side. But quite a few people in the We Want Picks Discord, which I would recommend you join, were actually just discussing hours before I recorded this video that they think Jake Matthews is going to win by finish. And I'm kind of just sitting there thinking to myself, like, man, I don't know. The thing about Phil Rowe, though, that I will put out there is that his wins haven't aged that well. A win over Orion Kosuke, although he was undefeated at the time, doesn't look good. He's not in the UFC anymore. Jason Witt is probably one of the most chinny welterweights the UFC has ever seen. Everybody knocked out Jason Witt when he was in the company. And then he knocked out Niko Price, but Niko Price, as I was just talking about, just got knocked out by Robbie Lawler and potentially is about to lose to Alex Morono. And then he lost to Neil Magny. And this was one of the, I'm just going to have to say it again, one of the weirdest fights I've actually ever seen. Because in that fight, Rowe just kind of kept trying to wrestle Neil Magny. It's just a really, really odd game plan. And a lot of that fight took place in the clinch. And then Magny would have moments on the feet, Rowe would have moments on the feet. But it's just a really boring fight. I don't think a lot of people enjoy rewatching it at all. It wasn't very good. I guess you could argue that Rowe should have won, but at the end of the day, I feel like his fight IQ actually let him down. And in this matchup against Jake Matthews, I think he should try and avoid the clinch and the grappling at all costs, because Jake Matthews is a very talented grappler. I know he went out there and outboxed, where is he? He outboxed Andre Fialho and almost looked like a future champion in that fight. And a lot of people can agree with me, a lot of people that were watching that fight when Jake Matthews had a big comeback after over a year away after losing to Sean Brady, which isn't a bad loss at all. He beat Fialho, and there was talk that Jake Matthews was about to become the next big thing, especially the next big thing out of Australia, and then he loses to Semmelsberg, and it was just a really disappointing striking performance. He didn't really do anything in that fight, but his boxing looked incredible against Fialho. The win over Darius Flowers is alright, but Flowers is a lightweight that took that fight on short notice, and then he lost to Michael Morales, but not a lot of shame in that one there. I feel like if Jake Matthews, his best chance to win this fight is actually to use that very good boxing that he does have to close the distance and shoot takedowns and get Phil Rowe down to the ground to use that grappling. I feel like for Phil Rowe, though, I think he wants to keep the fight on the feet. He's a pretty tall guy for the weight class. He's 6'3" with an 80.5-inch reach, so 81-inch reach, I guess. He can use his length well. He is like Neil Magny in a way, but kind of like, I guess he proved to be the B version of Neil Magny. I think he can use his range. I think he can use his length to keep Jake Matthews at bay, keep the fight on the feet with his takedown defense, and win a decision. It should be pretty fun, but I do think that Rowe should be able to use that striking and just kind of keep his distance management and win the fight that way. The next one is Grant Dawson taking on Joe Solecki. Definitely more of a comeback fight for both guys, but I feel like a big time comeback fight or big time comeback opportunity for Grant Dawson, because Grant Dawson, he was given a massive spotlight moment for him to really break out and potentially become a star in the UFC and potentially be the next guy that we talked about to be a big time contender at lightweight. And unfortunately, it just didn't quite work out for him. He did get knocked out by Bobby Green, and the worst part about it is just that it didn't really look like it was the most powerful shot that Bobby Green's ever thrown that put him down like that. So it's a shame. It is a shame, to be honest with you. I do kind of feel a little bit for Grant Dawson, but aside from that, he was on a very impressive run. He did have that draw to Ricky Glenn where he gassed out in the third round, but after that, he beat Demir Ismakilov. Good win, very good win. Beat Mark Madsen in a fight that he accepted on short notice and out-wrestled him in that fight. Very good win. And then he beat Jared Gordon, and that win is aging pretty well. Now, fighting Joe Solecki in this matchup here actually might be a pretty tough stylistic fight for him, because Joe Solecki is a very, very talented grappler, and in his own right was actually on a very good run, and in my opinion, a very underrated run in the UFC, because prior to getting slammed and losing to Drakkar Klose, he was 5-1 in the promotion, and I feel like in the UFC, and especially at lightweight, going 5-1 is very, very impressive, and people weren't really talking about Joe Solecki potentially being the big-time next prospect, and unfortunately that loss for Klose really did set him back, and I feel like set him back significantly more than what Grant Dawson losing to Bobby Green is, because Bobby Green still is a contender. I think he still has a ranking right now. But stylistically, it is going to be a little bit awkward for Grant Dawson because he is a wrestler. That's how he wants to win fights. He wants to wrestle. He wants to dominate in top control. He wants to take you down, of course. But then Joe Solecki kind of is the same sort of thing. And the striking, I don't think this fight does take place on the feet. I think either guy is going to be shooting for takedowns. But I don't even know who's going to win the striking, because I don't think Grant Dawson's striking is very good. But I don't really consider Joe Solecki to be a striker either. I would say the more awkward striker, or the guy that is definitely a lot more uncomfortable on the feet, is Grant Dawson. So maybe Solecki could make something happen on the feet, but I do like Dawson in this one. I'm seeing a lot of people parlay Dawson. Seems like a lot of people have big time confidence in Dawson. I do kind of understand that. So yeah, I'm going to go with Dawson. I do think he's going to be able to get it done. I think he gets it done by decision. Solecki, if he wins, I think it's going to have to be by sub. But Dawson's going to be a tricky guy to get a submission on. So give me Dawson. I'm going to go Dawson by decision in this matchup here. And then we can move on to the featured prelim. A fight that I was very much on the fence about, Roman Kopylov taking on Cesar Almeida, but I feel like I might have let myself just kind of convince myself of this. But I am going to officially sign with Cesar Almeida. I did side with Cesar Almeida last week, but I wasn't too sure about it. But now I'm definitely going to side with him. But as time has gone on, I feel like I've just kind of convinced myself to do it. I am more and more convinced as well that the fight is going to be taking place on the feet. Kopylov isn't a guy that shoots for takedowns. I know he did get a takedown on Pillow Hands Punahele, like 3 fights ago, but after that didn't shoot for a takedown on Ribeiro and didn't shoot for a takedown on Fremd. He's not a wrestler at all. I don't think he's got very good wrestling either, offensively or defensively, but he has been on an incredible run recently, but those wins, in my opinion, haven't really aged all that well. You know, Josh Fremd is a wrestler, he's a grappler, not really the best striker in the world, even though he did look very good on that fight, landed a lot of volume, beat Claudio Ribeiro, but you can't say that Ribeiro didn't give him problems on the feet, and Ribeiro, in my opinion, is nowhere near the striker as Cesar Almeida. And then he beat Pillow Hands Punahele in a fight which he actually got a takedown in, as I mentioned before, but he got beaten by Hernandez. Hernandez is a stylistic matchup nightmare for him, and also would be a nightmare for Almeida. Just a constant chain wrestler with incredible cardio. Now, Cesar Almeida, though, former Glory kickboxer, had a pretty successful kickboxing career, has come over to MMA and has had a lot of success. Went and won a fight against Alex Pereira, lost 2, albeit in 13, over 10 years ago, but he was still fighting in kickboxing in Glory in 2022, so it wasn't even that long ago that he was still striking and kickboxing with some of the best in the world. Now, he has come over to MMA and have good success. I mean, he's undefeated, but he didn't look incredible against Dylan Budka, and he didn't look incredible against Fernando either, but those were guys that were trying to take him down. Now, Roman Kopylov, in my opinion, isn't going to try and take him down. So that's going to make Cesar Almeida more comfortable on the feet. So now that he's going to be more comfortable on the feet, I think he's going to be more open to throwing more. I think he's going to be more open to having good movement. Another thing about Almeida that I am a little bit concerned about, though, is I was so impressed by his speed when I was actually looking at his older MMA fights and his kickboxing fights. This guy was so fast, man. But I worry he might have lost a little bit of that speed now that he is 36 years old. But ultimately, I do think in a pure striking fight, it's a close fight, but I don't think Kopylov's going to shoot for takedowns. And I look at Cesar Almeida and I look at how fast he is as a striker, and I hope he's still got that speed. I think he's going to be too fast for Kopylov on the feet, man. We saw Claudio Ribeiro having success against him on the feet, and Claudio Ribeiro, you know, just does not have any technique whatsoever, just kind of just throws and moves forward and pressures, big time leg kicks, very heavy leg kicks. I think Almeida is just like a much more technical version of Ribeiro, if you wanted to make a direct comparison between opponents. I like Almeida in this one. I do think he beats Kopylov. Now, it is worth noting he hasn't really beaten the best competition in the world, but I do think that Kopylov, maybe some of his performance are a little bit looked as too high on a pedestal. You know, Takiriko is a criminal now. I think he got arrested after getting released from the UFC, which is absolutely crazy. Pillow Hands Punahele, you know, not really a good win anymore. I mean, it was at the time, I guess, but... And then Claudio Ribeiro is probably not going to be in the UFC after his next fight, and then Josh Fremd Josh Fremd's good. I think he's good. He's chilling. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of it for the prelims, and I am going to say that I think that Cesar Almeida is a pick that I've just convinced myself to do, to be honest with you. And now we move on to the main card. Randy Brown is going to be taking on Elizeu Zaleski in the first fight of the pay-per-view, and I am going to be siding with Randy Brown with not that much confidence, though, to be honest with you. I think that Elizeu Zaleski kind of did show against Rinat Fakhretdinov that he really is a very dynamic guy, and he's going to be hard to deal with for anybody potentially on the roster right now, including a guy that does use his range very well in Randy Brown. Now, Randy Brown is another guy that's pretty tall for welterweight, stands at 6'3", has that 78-inch reach, And he does jab a lot, he does work from range a lot, and for the most part, he probably does want the fight to stay place on the feet. Now, the problem with that, though, is Elizeu Zaleski is got that capoeira background, as is with his nickname, and he's a very dynamic striker. He's very awkward to fight, you know, because he is switching stances, he is throwing spinning kicks, and he is throwing shots from awkward angles as well. But I feel like maybe someone like Randy Brown should be able to keep Elizeu Zaleski at his range and make him fight his fight. I think it's kind of going to be an interesting one, of course, because we did see Zaleski almost finish Renat as well. Show a lot of power after actually having quite a bit of time off after his fight against Abubakar Nurmagomedov. And that was another fight as well, which a lot of people thought that Abubakar Nurmagomedov won, even though Nurmagomedov did like absolutely nothing, to be fair, in that fight. But this is one that I feel like not that much discourse is happening right now. I don't really see that many people talking about this fight, even though it is on the main card of the pay-per-view. And in my opinion, it's actually a very difficult fight to predict. So maybe people don't care about this fight. I think it's an interesting one, though, because if Randy Brown wins, he's probably going to get a ranked opponent in the next one. I don't know. I just don't see that many people talking about this fight, even though I think it's going to be a very, very difficult fight to predict. And there probably will be a lot of people picking either side. But I do like Brown, and I do like Brown by decision in this one. Now we move on to Jailton Almeida taking on Alexandr Romanov. I'm done with Romanov, man. I said it in the last video. I was pretty harsh on him. I'm just done with Romanov. You know, he doesn't look like this anymore. Like, look at this guy. He looks like a champion. Looks like a pretty trustworthy bloke. Looks like a potential UFC champion. Looks like a potential UFC challenger. And then you go here. And this is an old photo. But he doesn't even look like this anymore. Like, what's up with Romanov, man? I feel like he's put on a lot of weight. I mean, his weight fluctuated a lot for quite a bit when he was fighting. Because he weighed in at 265 pounds. But I feel like not long before that, he was weighing in. He was always weighing in at 265, I guess. 260, 264... 236, that's right, he lost weight, weighed in at 239, and then come back against Volkov at 265. My bad, I apologize, I misread Tapology's website, but the point is, like, what is Romanov up to, man? Like, dude, he was such a promising prospect at one point, and then he took on Tybura, got a 10-8 in my opinion in the first round, absolutely dominated Tybura in the wrestling, was so impressive in that round, and then he gassed out, because the fight was at elevation, and then he fought Volkov. And this was actually the time he put on the 30 pounds. So he weighed in at 235 pounds against Tybura. Then he weighed in at 265 pounds against Volkov. And it wasn't like he just like bulked up and put on lots of muscle so he can maybe, or lost a lot of belly fat or something. I don't know. He just kind of put on weight. And he didn't get his takedown against Volkov. And then he gave up. Like, he kind of gassed out in 2 minutes. It was really weird and a really bad performance, but he did bounce back against Blagoy Ivanov, but that was a sloppy fight, and, like, it was just a bit bad. It wasn't very good. And he's going to be fighting Jailton Almeida, and I understand that Jailton Almeida did get knocked out by Curtis Blaydes because, you know, I guess he just didn't expect Blaydes to hammer fist him there, even though he had his head completely exposed when shooting for the takedown. You can't ignore the fact that he was taking down Blaydes at ease in round number 1. And we've never really seen anyone do that to Curtis Blaydes. And Curtis Blaydes, I have said, I think a lot of people would agree with me, by saying that Curtis Blaydes is probably the best pure wrestler at the UFC heavyweight division right now. And we just saw Almeida take him down over and over and over again in round number 1 and stack up a lot of control time against Curtis Blaydes. And that really could have happened for 3 rounds if Blaydes didn't knock him out in the second. Now we're going to be seeing him take on Romanov. And in my opinion, I feel like if Almeida gets a takedown on Romanov, Romanov's just going to gas out trying to work his way back up. That's really what I think happens. I really think that Jailton Almeida is going to go up there. He's going to beat Romanov by submitting him when he gasses out. Because I feel like if Almeida takes down Romanov's going to have to work his way back up to the feet. And he's going to gas out. I mean, Alexander Volkov defended 1 takedown against Romanov and he gassed out in 2 minutes. You know, Jailton Almeida is going to take him down over and over and over again. And getting up and down is going to be very tiring. Romanov's going to have to work out of positions he's probably never ever been put in before. I don't think I've ever seen Romanov taken down and put it on his back before. Almeida's definitely going to do it. And on the feet as well, I think Almeida's the better striker. So I like Almeida in this one here. I think he is going to be able to make a pretty big time comeback and be able to defeat Alexandr Romanov, who at one point was a very promising prospect. Now he's taking on the current promising prospect. And I think Almeida's going to submit him. I think Romanov's going to gas out. Honestly, I think that's what's going to happen. So give me Almeida. Give me Almeida by like round 1 submission. Maybe round 2, but let's be real. Probably round number 1. I don't know how to feel about Romanov anymore, man. Now we have Kevin Holland fighting Michal Oleksiejczuk. Relatively short notice fight announced. I think this fight was actually only announced like, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I feel like the UFC looked at the card and saw that they didn't have that many fights announced. Because to be fair, a lot of fights have been cancelled prior to this one, which is a big shame. It was actually meant to be a little bit of a bigger card, maybe a little bit of a better card, you could argue as well. So they called up Kevin Holland and they said, hey mate, we need you to fight. We need you to fight at middleweight. Take on Michal Oleksiejczuk for us so we can have another big name on the card. And of course, they both accepted. It's a good stylistic matchup, I feel like, for Kevin Holland. I am kind of hoping that it's a one-off at 185 because I know he was on a 2-fight losing streak. I do still think that Holland at 170 pounds is better than him at 185 pounds. And now he's going to be fighting Michal, who is actually, in his own right, in my opinion, a little bit of an undersized middleweight, even though he was a former light heavyweight at one point, which is crazy to think about. But Michal is stylistically a good matchup for Kevin Holland, in my opinion, because Holland is going to want to strike. I know he's a very good grappler, but I don't think he's going to want to take down Michal. And Michal's going to welcome that, because Michal, although he does shoot for takedowns every now and then, he's a pure boxer. That's kind of it. He kind of really is just a pure boxer. He doesn't really offer too much more other than that. He doesn't throw leg kicks. I don't think he really throws kicks in general. He just wants to box. And I feel like Kevin Holland might welcome that, except I think that Kevin Holland is going to throw a lot more kicks than Michal does. Another thing that Michal doesn't do either is defend leg kicks, so I think Kevin Holland is going to have a lot of success throwing leg kicks. So yeah, just kind of based off that, I do actually like Kevin Holland to win this fight by decision. Michal's a pretty tough guy. I think he got finished. He got finished by Michal Pereira in about a minute, but Michal Pereira, sorry, is just gonna dominate these welterweights, man. And so these heavyweights, these middleweights. My goodness, my brain is not working. I'm actually in exam mode right now. I think my my big boy exams, like my real exams, are coming up. Not next week, but the week after. So I've got to start studying. Anyway, I think Holland is going to win this one. I think he should be the faster guy, beating the guy that has recently experienced 170 pounds. Michal's a good boxer. He's going to have power, but I don't think he's going to land on Holland. So yeah, I like Holland in this one here. I like him by decision, though, to be fair. Even though a lot of people are picking him by finish. Now Sean Strickland is going to be fighting Paulo Costa. 5-round co-main event. I was going to double check. Yes, it is a 5-round co-main event. I think 5-round does benefit Sean Strickland and benefits Sean Strickland a lot. I don't think we've ever seen Paulo Costa go 5 rounds. I think I said in my last video that we haven't really seen Paulo Costa go 5 rounds. I don't think we've ever seen Paulo Costa go 5 rounds, because that fight against Robert Whittaker was 3 rounds, wasn't it? It was 3 rounds. But in that fight, though, he did have success against Robert Whittaker, because he did actually almost finish him, or at least had him hurt at the end of round number 1 on the feet. Prior to that, though, he fought Luke Cold once again at elevation and just didn't... Oh, no, we have seen him go 5 rounds. Oh, no. Oh, no. It's the end of the video, and I've absolutely messed it up. Anyway... Paulo Costa has had experience going 5 rounds, but to be fair, the fight against Vettori was at light heavyweight, which was weird. If you guys know, you know, but if you weren't there, then you don't know. But if you were there, then you know about that situation. That was absolutely hilarious. But yeah, Sean Strickland, the former champion, he was the champion, obviously, when he beat Israel Adesanya in Australia. I was there, I think it was in Sydney. And then he lost against Dricus du Plessis in his first title defense. But the thing is, while he was the champion, he was talking about he didn't really care about the bout. He didn't really care about being the champion. He just wanted to make money. He just wanted to fight, I guess, because it is Sean Strickland. But then he lost to Dricus du Plessis, and he really wants that bout all of a sudden. So maybe it is just a situation where he lost the belt and then he realized, oh, actually, I do want to build a legacy as a champion. I do want to be looked at as the champion. I do want the respect that comes by being the champion. So Strickland's going to be on a little bit of a run to get back to the belt. I do think if he beats Costa, he's going to be up there, but I don't think he's going to get an instant shot. I think there is a couple of other massive fights at middleweight right now being announced, and although Costa is a top contender, he is 1-3 in his last 4. So I think for Strickland, it's going to take beating Costa and then beating someone else to then getting that title shot again. But for Sean Strickland, though, the way that he fights is odd. He's mostly a boxer, I would say, and once again, that's kind of it, really. Like, he does have good wrestling and good grappling in his background, but he doesn't use it, and that's, in my opinion, a massive, massive problem, and I think that's actually why he lost the title. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. In that fight against Dricus du Plessis was winning the close rounds because he was getting takedowns. Sean Strickland had opportunities in that fight to actually steal close rounds and get the takedowns, and he just didn't take them, or at least he just didn't even attempt the takedowns to then steal the rounds. You know, if you watch that fight back, it's incredibly close. You really could argue the fight either way, but one big difference is the fact that Dricus du Plessis was able to get a lot of control time and was able to get a lot of takedowns in that fight as well. And I feel like Strickland could have actually prevented Dricus du Plessis getting takedowns by taking down Dricus du Plessis, because you can't really get a takedown on someone if you're being taken down, unless you want to reverse it. But I'm getting a little bit too technical there. For Costa, I think Costa's just going to want to try and knock him out. I know that it is there, you know, because Alex Pereira did knock out Sean Strickland, because Dricus du Plessis was having a lot of success pressuring against Sean Strickland and landing big shots there. That's another thing that it come down to as well. Dricus du Plessis was arguably landing harder, even though Strickland was landing more. And maybe Costa could do something like that, but just hard to take Costa seriously after the Martin Vettori situation, which I probably spent a minute yapping about that. And then he fought Rockhold, and that fight was really competitive. Like, it wasn't like super, super competitive, but it was more competitive than it was meant to be. And then Whittaker beat him up after he had moments in the first round. I just don't really know how to feel about Costa at this point in his career. He was an absolute machine at the start when he got signed to the UFC for the first time. He was knocking absolutely everybody out. But yeah, I just don't know if he's going to be able to land those shots on Strickland. I know Alex Pereira did, but Alex Pereira is Alex Pereira, you know? And I don't know. I don't think there's any striker like Alex Pereira right now in the UFC. So yeah, I like Strickland. I like Strickland by 5-round decision. I think the 5 rounds benefits him significantly, and I think Costa could definitely slow down in that fight. The main event is here. Islam Makhachev minus 500, but taking on Poirier. I did pick Makhachev. I think my clip of me talking about how Makhachev has beaten all of my favorite fighters did the rounds on Twitter. Which is, I guess, kind of funny. But yeah, I kind of talked about how Makhachev has beaten, you know, Volkanovski, one of my favorite fighters, and then he beat Charles Oliveira, one of my favorite fighters, and then, yeah, Dan Hooker is literally my favorite fighter of all time, and he beat him too, which is quite sad. But anyway, it is what it is. Makhachev, I feel like Makhachev is here to stay. I think he is going to be a dominant champion. I feel like Dustin Poirier, though, does present a pretty unique stylistic matchup for him, though, because Poirier is a good striker. You know, pure boxer. A lot of people think that he's probably the best pure boxer in the UFC, or at least that's what people did think, but maybe that opinion could definitely be changed with Max Holloway looking really good. And then, like, I don't know, Petr Yan made a comeback, and I would say I'd be pretty willing to say Petr Yan's the best boxer in the UFC. I don't know. I don't really know. Yeah, I think that's probably a conversation for a completely different video. But the point is, Dustin Poirier is a very, very, very good boxer, and that is where his strength really lies. I understand he's got good wrestling, he's got a wrestling background, he's got good takedown defense, he's got decent kicks as well, he hits really hard, but the boxing is where he gets it all done, really, and he is going to be the better striker in the matchup. I know that Islam Makhachev, though, has improved his striking a lot. In fact, he's a very good striker. I would consider Islam Makhachev to probably be a much better striker than what most people think he is. He's definitely got better striking than what Khabib did. Maybe a controversial take. I don't know, but I think that Islam Makhachev's striking is better than what Khabib's was. But I do think that he should still be able to just go out there and get the takedowns on Poirier. I feel like one thing that people aren't talking about enough is the fact that Benoit Saint Denis was getting takedowns on Poirier over and over and over and over again. Now, I understand a lot of those times was because Dustin Poirier was trying to shoot for guillotines, and it's become a bit of a meme now, which I'm a little bit worried about, because if Poirier does try and pull guillotine against Makhachev, Makhachev's too good for that, man. Guillotines, or guillotines, I think people call them guillotines, guillotines, same thing. Guillotines, they don't really work at the highest level. Like, the amount of times that you see someone escape from a guillotine is significantly more than you see someone escape from an armbar, for example. You know, it's not really a submission that has a very, very high percentage chance of working. And the problem is, if you fail the guillotine, you're on bottom. You've given up a very good position, and especially when you've got someone like Islam Makhachev on top of you, who is nasty ground and pound, very, very heavy on top as well, because you need to consider the fact that Islam Makhachev is absolutely gigantic for the weight class. In fact, he probably is one of the biggest lightweights on the roster. I mean, he's absolutely huge. I know Jailton Turner probably takes that spot, but Makhachev is huge for the weight class. He's absolutely massive, and he must cut a lot of weight to make 155. He's going to be bigger than Poirier. I think he's a better wrestler than Benoit Saint Denis. I know the French fans are not going to like that, but I think Makhachev is a better wrestler than Benoit Saint Denis is. I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns against Poirier, and I don't like the retirement talks, man. I really don't, because even if it was his retirement fight, I feel like just the thought of retiring, when it's lingering there, he's going to go into this fight, and he might not even really be thinking about the fight as much as he was if he was fully committed to his career, because he might be like, oh, after this, you know, me and my family, we can go on holiday to Italy, or we can go on holiday to Hawaii. I don't know. You can go on holiday, like, we can do this after I retire, or we can focus on my charity. I can focus on this. I might be able to open up my own gym, this and this and that. You're not actually thinking about, like, the fight, you know? And I worry about that a little bit too for Poirier. I think stylistically, Makhachev is absolutely massive for the weight class. I think he's going to be able to take down Poirier. I think he's going to get control. I think we are going through Khabib 2.0 right now, because obviously Makhachev is, I believe, directly related to Khabib, and is definitely his protege. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, even at lightweight, like, who beats Makhachev? I still maintain that Charles Oliveira probably had the best chance. I did actually pick Oliveira to win that fight. And then, who else beats him? You know, like Arman Tsarukyan, I didn't think looked very good against Oliveira in his last fight. You know, Gamrot's a bit fraudulent. I did actually at one point believe that Gamrot had the best style because he's such a talented wrestler, but I don't think so anymore. Gamrot's striking is not good enough to deal with Makhachev's striking. Like, who beats him? You know, Gaethje just got knocked out. Holloway's not going to have the takedown defense, in my opinion, to deal with Makhachev. I don't think anyone beats him, unless it's going to be a big-time KO blow. So, let me know what you think. I know there's people out there picking Poirier to win, but I don't know. I think I've kind of just accepted the fact that I think Makhachev is just really good. So yeah, I think he beats Poirier. I think he beats him. I think he submits him in the first 2 rounds, which is not going to be what people want to hear. I know. I think the underline is set for under 2.5, so I actually don't mind that. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm just really convinced that Makhachev's good. I like him by ground and pound TKO as well, by the way, not submission. Yeah, I think Makhachev knocks him out. Sad, I know, but yeah, I just can't see it being a good fight for Poirier to retire. And if he beats Poirier, what does that make him have more title defensives than Khabib? So would Makhachev might, yeah, if Makhachev beats Poirier, I think he's higher up on the GOAT list, which is something I've kind of considered doing, because I've seen a lot of GOAT lists recently, and they're not very good. They're not very good. I've never actually done one, but I know where some fighters definitely rank. I think GSP is still my number 1, even though Dana White seems to think that Kamaru Usman's higher up than GSP on the welterweight GOAT list, which is crazy. And then I have Aldo over Volk, which actually one of my friends in real life, because I do actually have friends, and I were disagreeing on. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below about that one. maybe some controversial goat takes at the end there, but yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.